Welcome back to the Coach's Playground. I'm super excited to welcome in a man who I listened to for the first time 5-6 years ago on the Fitcast, the old school, probably like one of the first like real fitness podcasts. And I heard him, and he had just started diving into this concept of collecting moments, not things. And I'm just super excited to talk about that. He's someone that I just appreciate having the opportunity to chat with. So thanks for being here, Mr. Brendon Rearick.
Thanks for having me on, Gavin. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
So when I shared your bio, the last line in your bio is something that I really want to dig into right away. Life's not about what we have, but who we share it with. I'm a true believer that the only currency that we really have is relationships. Talk to me a little bit about where this line comes from.
Well, the line actually comes from my grandmother's house. In her bathroom, she has this black and white photo. And in the photo, there's a woman hanging stuff, I think on her clothesline, but in pink. So the photo is black and white, but in pink, it says, life's not about what we have, but who we share it with. And for whatever reason, I've been looking at that photo in my grandmother's bathroom for 30 years. And that's always kind of stuck with me. And that's always been kind of top of mind ever since I've been young. So I've seen it 1,000 times. And long story short, 5-6 years ago, I got really sick. And that was one of the things that kind of really jumped out at me, along with the collect moments, not things slogan. So yeah, that's actually where it comes from, is from my grandmother's house. And then a life event kind of brought it to the forefront and made it part of my personal life motto or slogan.
A life event reminds you that grandma knows what she's talking about.
Exactly.
Right? And I was like, that's actually part of the reason for this podcast, to be honest, is like to just have more great conversations and hopefully open up the opportunity for more relationships with people who are crazy like me. What's your thought on like, just like, yeah, there's like this whole like network is your net worth and all that stuff. And I subscribe to that, but just like the importance of like building deep and real relationships through conversations, like taking this into action, so to speak.
Yeah. And before we started this call, we talked about opportunities. And I say yes to all of these conversations and opportunities because they bring me more opportunity later. So there's the saying that the rich get richer, right? Well, I think of that as the same thing with conversations. The more conversations I have, the more opportunities I seem to collect as well. Mm-hmm. So the more people I help, the richer I become.
Yes.
It's actually the final rule in my book is rule number 105 is the more people you help, the more successful you'll seem to become. And I actually have a rule in here as well that taken from a business coach, Brian Tracy, who says that for every dollar you spend on yourself, you can expect a 30-to-1 return. Now, is that true? I don't know. I mean, I like the theory. And that's way better than any return you'll get on an investment or the stock market, a 30-to-1 return. So I thought of it and said, well, what if I spent more time on my relationships? Every time I give something away or give an hour away or spend an hour on a podcast or go and help somebody go out of my way, I seem to get a 30-to-1 return as well. Mm-hmm. So giving away time or investing money in yourself are two equally good ways to get quite the return on investment. So that's kind of how I think about relationships.
Man, this is where I wanted to go. This is great. I'm glad we got here already. Yeah. Like if you can help more people, you're ultimately going to bring in more money. And one of the things that my coach once told me, a former coach of mine, was like, if you want to if you want to make $100,000, $1 million, $10 million, you have to provide that amount of value to the world. Money is simply a value or an energy exchange. If you find a way to bring millions of dollars worth of value to the world, or the equivalent of that, you will in turn bring that in, especially as service providers. I mean, the fitness world, whatever it is, the coaching world in general, the more value you can bring, or the more that you can give, right, the more that you're going to be able to bring in return. And I feel also like this might be more of the focusing on the process, and then the outcome will take care of itself, right? Like if you continue to focus on the process of helping more people or having more conversations, the outcome is going to take care of itself. Talk a little bit about that, about kind of just having faith that the outcome will shake out.
Well, it's the reason why we started Certified Functional Strength Coach, is because if I can teach one coach who's a personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, Pilates, yoga, whatever, and they have 10 clients, I've effectively helped 11 people. So if I could help 1,000 coaches and they all have 10 people that they train, I help 10,000 people, or 11,000 people actually, because I helped each of the coaches. So again, you're saying you're getting this return on investment for everyone that you can help. That's really, and so Certified Functional Strength Coach in the first year or two, we didn't help that many people. We had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people coming to our courses for the first year or two. And it was just Coach Kevin Carr and I leading all of those, traveling all around, making no money because our expenses cost more to get there than we were bringing in for the coaching. But eventually, again, like you said, put your faith in that. If you keep helping people, it's going to pay a return eventually. And we are, I believe, 6 years in, and we've certified almost 8,000 people. So that's, in the beginning, it was not like that, but we put our faith in the process. We put our faith in that the more people we help, the more successful we seem to become. And here we have a $1 million education business that is certifying 2,000 to 3,000 people a year.
Yeah. Folks, if you want to know the actual, just do the math on it. 8,000 coaches, they're, it's better than, not covering your expenses at this point. Right. And I would love to hear, okay, so it's year 1, year 2, you and Kevin Carr, you guys knew, you guys put in the time to develop this thing, and you're traveling around. You've got a handful of people coming to these events. Cause I feel like anyone who's ever done anything like this totally feels you. Is just like, oh my God, like there's nobody here. Right. But so what goes through your head at that point? Like, are you guys looking at each other going like, okay, I mean, was it just a belief in the product that you were providing? Was it just an absolutely ridiculously stupid belief in yourselves that you probably shouldn't have had? Like, what was it that got you through those? Because most people would just be like, screw this and quit.
Well, we were young and dumb, which helped, because we were 24, 25 years old, no family, no whatever, no major responsibilities. So we had the energy, we had the time to put in the effort to see what happened. Plus, we knew by being around Coach Boyle what Coach Boyle brings in and what he draws in. So if Coach Boyle's coaching those events, he's got 100, 200 people coming at a time. But because it's Kevin and Brendon and MBSC employees teaching it, and there's no Mike Boyle there, it's going to be a little slow in the beginning. And then we started, again, making those relationships with those specific people, the small groups that were coming. It allowed us to create a lot more of an intimate relationship and coaching environment. Plus, we had to get all the kinks out. I mean, the course that we have now is light years better than what we had 5 years ago, or even last year, because we just keep improving upon it. So yeah, we were young and dumb and willing to do whatever, travel wherever, coach whoever, do whatever for very little money at the time. And then we saw what Coach Boyle was doing and brings in. We know what he brings in for a speaking event, which means that it's in the realm of possibility. We just need to put in the work to get there. So I think it was partly, yeah, we were young enough and had the time, and that we saw what it could be like if we worked hard enough and put in the effort and kept improving upon the product, that people buy Mike's products, but they buy Mike. So we had to create something or do such a good job that they would buy the product. So when they buy Certified Functional Strength Coach, they get a byproduct of Coach Boyle, but they're not buying Coach Boyle. But when you go to a speaking event with him, at least 5 or 6 years ago, you were buying Mike. So we had to kind of not reinvent the wheel, but we kind of had to change our marketing a little bit. Okay, like buy the system, stop buying Mike, even though people still buy Mike, but we had to also get them to buy the system. And now they're buying the system, and we have 11 coaches. I believe now we might be down to 9, but we've had a lot of coaches go through, and anybody who works at MBSC is available to teach that course because it's the system that we run at Mike Boyle Strength Conditioning.
And I really like that idea that you guys really touched upon, or you guys kind of stumbled upon, was like, because so many people that I coach, and I'm sure that you see in the fitness business space, I mean, we don't have the name. Like, I don't have the name either. And so when you don't have the name like Mike Boyle, right? You have to, like, people are buying something. Yes, you are probably a great coach and they just don't know that yet. But at the same time, they need to see that, right? And to get them in the door, you've got to sell something. And that's where I really feel like, first of all, creating a really, really good product. I mean, there's that. And then making sure that people know it's really, really good, and selling the system. I think that's such, like, just, helping our coaches say, like, look, like, yeah, they're not going to buy your name. They don't know who you are, but if you can help them see that the system benefits them for what they want, they'll buy that.
And then they'll tell other people about it.
If it's good enough and they get the results,
if it's
right?
If it's good enough and you deliver, they'll talk about it.
They can't not. Everyone has to have a guy or a girl, right? You got to talk about it. Also the idea of getting the kinks out. So many people will have this idea for some, let's say, I bet there's been hundreds and even thousands of people who've had an idea like the Certified Functional Strength Coach.
Right.
But they haven't been willing to, as you said, get the kinks out. And I think that taking action, I mean, you said this to me before, you're like, nothing's off limits. Cause, like, I'll give you everything. Cause most people just aren't going to act on it. Right.
Yeah. You
guys took something, you basically, like, said, we're going to lose money on this thing, or you noticed that you were losing money on it, but you knew that this was there was something bigger here. And I think
we were gaining traction.
Right. And
the right word. Yeah.
You were also preparing yourself for when 50 to 100 people would show up, right? If you had presented that first ever iteration with 50 to 100 people, you would have got 50 to 100, like, yeah, that was pretty good reviews, right? But you could make it better because you took action and you got feedback. Well, that felt really shitty and that felt really good. And we got a lot of good feedback there. So let's double down on that. You could actually reiterate the program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a book, but there's also a saying. It's ready, fire, aim. And that's what we did. We produced what we thought would be the best products we could think of at the time. It wasn't human. It was tested in the gym, but it wasn't tested with other trainers and us teaching it over a 8-hour time period. And then that's where we got all the kinks out, was actually coaching, doing it with other coaches, getting feedback, and then we kept developing and adding to the product, and then cutting away everything that didn't work. And that took us about 2 years before we, again, started actually making a profit on the actual product. And that was part of it. Again, we were young enough and dumb enough to be willing to give up our free time and our paychecks to see that happen. And again, people ask me what my philosophy is. They're like, I mean, here you go. Like literally in my book, this is everything you could ever want to know what I think, but it comes down to what are you going to do with it, right? So I can give it all to you. I can literally spoon feed it to you, but if you're not going to take action, then was it worth participating or reading? I don't know.
Yes.
So that's where I have nothing off limits. I will give you every program I've ever written happily. It's what are you going to do with the program and who are you going to use it on and what context are you going to use it in? Like if you don't have half the equipment that I wrote in the program's junk. It does.
Right.
You can use the philosophy, but you can't really use the program. So principles and philosophies is what I'm trying to get out of people myself. And then I try to connect the dots where the dots make sense in my world.
So let's dive into that. So those of you that aren't watching on video, Brendon's holding up his book, which I can't even imagine how exciting that is to have like your own book. And it's called Coaching Rules, a how-to manual for a successful career in strength and fitness. How did this book, what sparked it and how did it come to fruition?
So I knew, I think probably 10 years ago when I read the book Food Rules by Michael Pollan. And Food Rules is one of my favorite books of all time because it just disseminates all the information you could want to know into a very simple, consumable, small little like handbook about nutrition. It gets rid of all the, I mean, it's based on science, but it gets rid of all the science and the junk and the fancy words, and it's very, very easy to pick up and read. And I knew that's what kind of coaching book I wanted to write. I just didn't know when, I didn't know how. And when I was the internship coordinator at Mike Boyle Strength Conditioning, I wrote an article. It was the 24 things I wish I had known before I started my internship at MBSC. And I presented that to the 24 interns that we had coming in for the summer. These were the 34 things I wish I knew. And all 34 of those things are in this book. And I've just expanded on it over the last 8 years. So 2 years ago, I actually wanted to write fitness rules. And I have that book done. The hardest part is the editing process. It's not the writing process. It's the organizing and the editing. And I went to Larry Draper, who does Mike's book, Dan John's book, Gray Cook. And she said, I don't really do books for the average consumer or the average fitness professional. I do books for coaches. So she said, why don't you write a book on coaching rules or rules about coaching, which I have 3 books I want to write. There's fitness rules, coaching rules, and then life rules. I don't feel like I have imposter syndrome about writing life rules right now. I'm only 32. I feel like when I'm 40, that book will be ready to be written. But coaching rules and fitness rules, I feel very confident about. So I said to Laurie, I said, okay, I already had the rules. I actually had 180 rules and I pared them down to 105. And I had most of these things written in blogs and tweets, but it was organizing, editing, and putting it all together, which took about a year to do. So I had the writing done. I had all the rules. I knew what those were going to be. And so I made coaching rules for this is what I would want an intern, or I prefaced it as on the back here. To a young coach, this book will be a sturdy platform to begin your new career. To the seasoned coach, you will find subtle reminders of fresh perspective and reassurance that you're not alone. And right on the first page, I have, this is the book I wish I had when I started coaching 12 years ago, when I was 20 years old. This is what I wish I had started with. So that's why I wrote the book. That's how it came about. It's based loosely off of Food Rules by Michael Pollan. The 4 rules, to keep it very, very simple, are communicate clearly, do no harm. Communicate clearly is more about those relationships. Do no harm is about programming. Keep it simple is about programming as well. And then 4 is serve others. And I tried to keep it to 3, but I couldn't make programming only 1 rule. So programming ends up being do no harm, keep it simple. And then serve others, it originally was make it about them, not about you. But serve others says that in 2 words instead of an entire sentence.
And therein lies the editing process, right?
Oh my God. I mean, if I didn't write a book again, it would be because of that. The editing and the organizing is miserable. And by the time I was done with this book, I never wanted to see it again. I wanted to see it in print, but I don't ever want to read it again because I've probably read this book 150 times through the editing process, and it is, whew, and you got to kill it. That Stephen King, he has a really cool book called On Writing, and he calls it Killing Your Darlings. And so you have these characters that you've developed and like these really cool plot lines, but it doesn't help the book, and it just doesn't fill or fit or flow into the book. And I had so many good rules, and I was like, yeah, I love this rule. And then I'm going through the book, and I'm like, it doesn't fit anywhere in this book. And you got to kill your darlings. It's a painful feeling, but
what a great lesson on there is like, saying no to good so that you can really bring out the greatness in the other lessons, right? Is this one good enough, or is it just good? Right.
Yeah.
I did a little digging, and I know you kind of shared your first few rules. And so I really liked, and I'd love to just hear your take on rule number 6. You will never read the same book twice. That really hit me when I saw that. Can you tell me just a little bit of backstory on that, and then we'll just dive into that.
So the quote from John Barton is, "You can never step into the same book twice because you are different each time you read it." So for example, there's 3 books that I read every year, no matter what. They're E-Myth, which is my favorite business book. There's The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday, which I read daily. So I read one of those a day. And then the final one is Empowerment Now. There you go. The Power of Full Engagement by, his name starts with an L and a J. I can't remember, but I always read those. Oh, and Today Matters by John Maxwell, because those books center me and have changed the way that I mentally prepare myself, my life, my work. And so, for example, 5 years ago, I didn't have a kid. Now I'm a father. And so that means I'm a different person. 6 years ago, I got really, really sick and was in the hospital. I'm a different person than I was before I got sick. So there's all these things that happen in our life, and everybody can agree that you're a much different person than when you were 21, than 18, than 17, whatever.
And thank the Lord for that.
Yeah,
thank the Lord for that.
Thankfully, I am not that same person. But yeah, every year I pull something different that I was not either prepared to hear, or wasn't in a space to hear, or I hadn't experienced that yet, so I didn't really understand it. But those are my 4 favorites. But I guess the thing is like this. The reason why it's in here is because you'll be a different coach every 3 years. If you read this a couple times over your career, you'll just pull different things from it and understand it in a different way. So that's really where that quote came from. And those are the 4 or 5 books I read every year myself, because I'm always a different person, and I'll continue to keep reading those books.
Yeah, I remember even it was like my first year coaching, and or my first year like really programming, like creating my own programs. And I heard Eric Cressy say, if you're not like disgusted by your programs from a year ago or 6 months ago or something, then you're not growing fast enough. I was like, what? Like, what is he talking about? And then of course, a year later, you're like, oh what was I doing with that program? Right. Like it just doesn't hit you right. And then, and there's so many things that I have reread or done very similar experiences where you take something completely different out of it, mostly because you've changed, but also even just like the things that have happened leading up to it, and the different experience that creates, and that's the coolest part about that. This is getting a little meta, but like everything that is because like you are the one writing the script of the movie. You are the one, like your brain and how the lens through which you view the world That's why you and I could read the exact same book and have a completely different take on it, because you've viewed the world, or you've had such a different life than me in general.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Super. I really like thinking about things that way and realizing like, yeah, like even if you finish this book, close it and reopen it, it will be different because you've read the book once already.
Right. Right.
It's going to
And
be
that's,
different.
yeah. And I mean, I read a lot and I read a lot of different things, but it always comes back to those few books. Like if I had a choice, I would read those because of the way they center me, and then the way that it puts me in a mindset, or it, like you're saying, challenges my own perspective of what I've experienced since the last time I read it,
Mm-hmm.
which is very, very important. Because you can't, if you're always reading something new or looking for the next best thing, you can never really reflect on anything. It's impossible to reflect if you're always just going to the next thing.
Yeah. Well,
So,
reflection needs a reflection point. It needs something to reflect
right,
off of. Right. So
right, correct.
that's why I love rereading, or, jumping back into, say, like some course material from the past. Cause it's like, it just gives you something different to reflect on. Like, oh, I've changed, even just
Right,
understanding that you've changed is
right.
important. Right. Yeah.
It's funny. I just got the head strength and conditioning job at the football for the high school in my town as the football strength and conditioning coach, and I start in 2 weeks. So yesterday I started rereading Periodization by Tudor Bompa, which I haven't read in. The first time I read it was in college, so I was 20 years old. So it's been 12 years. So I'm reading that, and then Speed, Agility, and Quickness. I can't remember who the author is, but they're both human kinetics books, which I haven't read either of them in over 10 years. And I've learned a lot over the last 10
Oh,
years about programming and training. So I'm a completely different person while I'm rereading these. So just, I wanted something that would put me back in that mindset of working with a team, because I've done a lot of personal training and people coming and go, and I haven't really had a team or anything like that since early in my career. So yeah, I'm going back to the roots, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, well, I didn't really understand
yeah.
any of this when I first read it. I had no idea really what I was reading, but here we are,
Yeah.
12 years later.
Yeah. Like they tell you to read periodization in school and you're just like, yeah, like, okay, this guy's
Yeah.
name sounds really cool. And like, I guess, I guess I get it, but like, I'm just out here ready to go like crush some squats and like get some other people.
Yep.
It's like, well, I mean, if you're training an athlete over the course of a year, you actually, and then once you have trained numerous athletes, or even just general population throughout the course of the year, you realize how important periodization is. And you're like, oh yeah, maybe I should go back to that. Okay. Okay. Maybe I
Yeah.
should check that out.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did make sense. I just didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
It's like your
Or,
parents, right? Your parents were right. You just didn't know it until you turned 30.
and then
And
you're like, oh shit.
yeah,
Oh
oh, that's
boy.
why they would tell me that.
Yeah, I don't have kids yet, but my mom always used to say to me, like when I was really going through the anguish of teenage years, like, just wait until you have kids. Just wait until, and I was like, whatever. Now I can kind
Yeah,
of start to understand where she's at. And I
yeah,
definitely
it's
will when I have kids.
yes, it's very true. So,
You talked about obviously not, and we'll get into, I'd love to learn a little bit more about just the lessons you've learned from your daughter, but you had mentioned how you got sick and how that changed a lot of things for you, totally changed
mhm.
your perspective. The one thing that that stood out to me from that very first interview that I heard you in, this was 5-6 years ago, folks, and I still remember hearing this,
Mhm.
was this concept of collecting moments and not things. Can you dive in a little bit, maybe a brief story on the illness and then how this came about?
Yeah, the illness was a autoimmune disease that attacks your bone marrow. So I was originally told I had leukemia, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's they consider you a cancer patient and you're treated in the cancer ward. The cure is a bone marrow transplant, and then the other option is to try this drug that is it's a chemotherapy drug where they basically reset your immune system and you hope that it stops attacking itself. And I was lucky enough to get the treatment and having the correct doctors and some of the best doctors in the world on my case, and they put me through this treatment, and the treatment worked. And knock on wood, it's been 5 years, and I've been healthy for the last 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, no, I take that back. It's been 5 years since I've had my last blood transfusion, but it was 6 years ago that I was diagnosed. So what it did for me was, well, these 2 life events. So being really, really sick and being in the healthcare system, and then having a child. When you're 20 years old and you've never been sick, I had never really seen death or anybody who was sick or had taken care of anyone who was sick. And then to have a child, like when you're 20, you think you know everything about parenting and what parents should do to stay healthy, what somebody should do to be healthy. When you're 20 years old, it's easy, and you have youth and good genetics on your side.
Yeah.
My whole perspective changed, because then I realized, like, holy shit, like, okay, I'm in the healthcare system now. I'm technically a cancer patient, and you're always in remission. You're never cured. So I know I'm very aware that at any moment it could come back. If I don't take care of myself, that increases the likeliness of it happening. But it also tells me that health is not what I used to think it was. I think I had what the media would tell us is healthy, right? If you've ever looked at a men's health magazine or a women's health magazine, everybody is shredded. They're in their bathing suits, very sexualized. I mean, that's what health is, right? That I have a 6-pack, that I eat paleo, and that blah, blah, blah. No, health to me now is, am I doing the best I can with what I have? Yes or no? Because if you were born with type 1 diabetes, that is not something that you had a choice about or that you could control. You didn't get to choose if you grew up in a home where your parents bought the best food or had the money to buy the best food. You weren't part of the economics. Yeah. But now do you have a choice to do, like, could you do better than you're doing? Yes, we could always do better, but are you doing the best you can with what you have available to you? So that's really the question that needs to be asked or answered in regards to healthcare. There are people, right? If you get in a car accident, you better get to a hospital soon and rely on modern medicine. There's a lot of people who are walking around. I can only have this conversation with you because of modern medicine. So I used to be anti-modern medicine, anti-healthcare, all of this. And I had this idea, very romanticized idea, that what the media would tell us of what health should look like. And I don't have that anymore. Health is different for all of us. We were talking about perspective. It's going to look different for a lot of people, but are you doing the best you can with what you have available to you? So that's really what the healthcare system did for me. In the book, I have one of my favorite things to say is, well, Hippocrates said, food as thy medicine. Great, that is very, very true. There is also movement as thy medicine. There is nature as thy medicine. There is mindset as thy medicine. And then there is medicine as thy medicine, because medicine keeps a lot of us alive. And everybody who's listening to this call has been to the hospital, is most likely only alive due to modern medicine. The childbirth death rate, death rates 100 years ago were 6 to 7%.
Right.
Of either the child or the mother. And modern medicine has effectively almost eliminated that. So I'm not here to say that there's only preventative care, there's no such thing as sick care, blah, 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 blah. Like, how do we make them both work together? Because we need sick care. But we also need to do a better job of preventative care. So that's really what getting sick, being part of the system, has really just changed my mindset about how we should go about it. And also maybe having more empathy for the people that I train. Because when you're 20 years old, you're like, well, why can't you be more like me? Yeah, all you do is complain about your kids and your medicines and blah, 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 blah. But I get it now. I get it. Like,
Right.
being a parent is hard, and some of us have medical issues that are not going to go away. And maybe they were from poor choices, but now we're stuck with them. So can you make a better choice now?
Can you do the best with what you have now?
Now, right now. Like, we can't go back and change the past.
Yeah.
Because if we looked at it that way and said, well, if you have a six pack, you're healthy, or if you eat this, you're healthy, or if you don't take medications, you're healthy, that eliminates a lot of people. And that means I'm not helping as many people as I can. As long as you're motivated to be here and you want to show up, I'll help you in any way that I can. Regardless of if you have a six pack or how you eat or what diseases you have or what medications you have. I mean, the goal is to get rid of those things, but they may or may not. Let's do the best you can with what you have right now.
Yeah, I love that. And that, that further to that point, talking about collecting moments of like doing the best you can with what you have right now. I mean, anytime I feel like death is very shocking to a lot of people, but a lesson can always be brought from it. And I had relatively recently, someone close to me pass at a young age, and realizing like the importance of moments and the importance of presence. Would you say that is kind of what, like, you talk about the fact that technically you're never cured. And so technically, you have a very real reminder that, and to not be too morbid, like that death is not that far away. If, for any, like, death is not that far away for me either. I could walk out the front door, right? We don't know. And so is that where this comes from? And then like, really, how is this thing kind of like snowballed and grown for you?
So the quick moments, not things. I apologize. I got on my healthcare soapbox.
That's fine, because I want to talk about that in a minute.
I forgot to answer the collect moments, not things question. That came about in college. I've always been a big believer in having less stuff. Stuff has never really. Now, I like nice things. I like nice wines. I don't want to drink, right? There's an ego part in all this. I don't wake up in the morning and think I want to be a crappy dad and a bad strength coach today. Like, no, I want to be the best dad and the best strength coach I can be. So there's a little bit of ego in all this, but I would prefer that when I die, the way that you continue living is through memories and moments that you created with people. You don't die with your stuff.
Yeah.
Your stuff doesn't go with you. But for example, my daughter is the best example. The more memories I create with her, that's how I continue to live on whenever that should end. And so I like to say you make roots in people's hearts, because then you can live anywhere in the world. And what I love about teaching is that I can literally go anywhere in the world and have a place to stay because of all the people that I've helped teaching. So if I come to Canada, I'm calling you, and I'm staying on your couch.
Hell yeah, man.
So you know that. But when you help more people, you have more opportunities and you have more things to fall back on when shit goes wrong. So it was in college. I can't remember where I thought. I want to say back in college, Facebook was the thing. There was no Instagram or anything, but somebody posted on Facebook, collect moments, not things. I was like, I love that. I would love to live my life like that. I got really into the whole tiny house idea, which tiny houses are great if you're living alone. You can't be married and have a kid and have a tiny house. Like, you can, but there's people that do it, but it ain't for me. But I love this idea of like, okay, if I'm going to buy someone a gift, I'm going to buy an experience, like going to a comedy show, or I'd much rather go on a vacation and drink beer somewhere than buy you a new car or buy you a shirt or buy you a bunch of stuff you don't need. So that's where that idea came from. And then being sick, really brought that idea, the collect moments, not things, and then life's about life's not about what we have, but who we share it with. It's really the same thing, just in a different way. And that's when those two things really like came to the forefront. And that's what I made my kind of personal campaign at the time, because I had two options. I could either ignore that all this was going on and not tell people about it, or I could use it for some sort of good. And my big thing was to remind people about this idea, but also to get people to register for the bone marrow registry, because there's lots and lots of people who need bone marrow transplants who don't necessarily have a donor. And I was one of those people. Luckily enough, I had 4 people who were a match for me if I had needed it. And I thankfully did not need the bone marrow transplant. But that's where this collect moments ideas thing came. And I used that as a way to kind of rally myself, but other people to be more aware of autoimmune diseases, collect moments, not things, and then the bone marrow registry, which is where all that came about. And then now it's kind of almost my personal tagline. Like you said, I always have it in the back of my mind that at any moment it could come back.
Yeah.
So.
And I think, I mean, what a great message to share, and what a great way to live life. You know, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is presence, and just like the greatest gift that you can give somebody is your presence, is your attention, is I care enough about you to give you my full attention in this moment right here. I mean, that again, to dive back into relationships and conversations, like that's what deepens those. That's what creates those, right? And then that also is what creates great coaching moments. You can't create a great coaching moment when you're distracted.
Right.
So the other part of the tangent you went on there around healthcare, you know, your goal is, by the time you retire, is to make exercise the #1 prescribed drug in the world. Now, we've talked a little bit about, I guess, you know, what may be wrong with the system, or also what may be wrong with how we see the system, especially with what you've gone through. First of all, why do you think exercise should be the #1 prescribed drug in the world? And then we can get into the how.
Well, I'll admit it's a little bit of a pompous, I guess, idea, or I think whatever drug you need in order to feel better and to continue doing what you want to do is the correct drug. But if I'm going to make a statement for myself and I'm going to plant my flag, it's going to be exercise should be the #1 prescribed drug in the world, along with whatever the other stuff that you need. There's this idea that, so for example, Bill Gates wanted to put a PC on everyone's desk. Steve Jobs wanted to put a dent in the universe. What's the other one? Gary V wants to own the New York Jets. Like, so there's these like North Stars. And I was like, I need a North Star. And my North Star is that exercise should be the #1 prescribed drug in the world, because if you look at the benefits and the effects of exercise, it literally helps everything. There's nothing that it doesn't help. It literally helps every disease, every problem, and exercise will look different for everybody. But if I'm going to plant my flag and I'm going to spend my time doing something for the next 38 years, so that's when I retired, 38 years, that's what I want my mission to be, is I want exercise to be the #1 prescribed drug in the world. Now, again, it's a very grandiose idea, and that could look a multitude of ways. And I don't know what it's going to look like 38 years from now, but that is my mission statement, and that is kind of my North Star and what I'm on a mission to do. I mean, by sharing my ideas, the book, the teaching, all of that, it all funnels down to this idea.
Like, that's not to say, like, I love what the #1 drug, right? Like, that's not to say that other drugs aren't valuable, like you'd said before, but exercise at this point isn't even in the conversation, unfortunately.
No.
around what is prescribed by our healthcare systems, which is why we're talking about how often they're not preventative, and you say like, it's so many people go black and white, but I feel like there's so many things where it's like, okay, we've got the preventative versus the sick care, right? That you talked about. It's like, well, why don't we just, like you said, make them better? Like we don't have to totally shift, because I mean, there's still going to be sick people through no fault of their own, and sometimes through their own fault. And that's fine. That's what we do with modern medicine, but can we make it better? I always see these things like fight this thing, or this is, well, why don't we just make it better? Because the idea of it is right, but let's just make it better, which, creeping up there for exercise is probably a good idea. Creeping it up there in the drug conversation.
If you get diagnosed with high blood pressure, you should get a blood pressure medication and walk 20 minutes a day. That should be prescribed. Start walking 20 minutes a day, 7 days a week, come back in 1 month, and we'll adjust your medication.
Yeah. Not here's the medication. Yeah. Here's the medication and stop.
Right. Or just, oh, your blood pressure's high, just start walking. Like, oh no, we should probably bring that down a little bit, because if they go for a walk, that could lead to a heart attack, because their blood is already pumping as if they're running. So let's do it better. Let's use both. Like, we know both work, so why aren't we using both?
Yes, I love that.
Then trying to get rid of one of them.
And hey, man, grandiose ideas. I mean, look at Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Like, they're doing pretty good.
Yeah. So that's where I was reading, I think it's a Peter Drucker book called Abundance. And Peter Drucker has this whole idea of 10Xing everything. I mean, this is what Elon Musk is famous for. Like, he just takes ideas and he 10Xs everything. Like, oh, space program? I'm going to just do it on my own.
Yeah.
Oh,
electric cars?
Yeah, space travel, electric cars? Yeah. Oh, they don't exist yet? Well, I'll just do it on my own. Oh, paying people online? Oh, yeah, I'm just going to invent that. Like that. And again, we were talking about having an idea and taking action on it. That's why Elon Musk is where he is, because he's ready, fire, aim.
Like I love this part too. Like, the thing that people don't understand is, like, Elon Musk has screwed a lot of shit up and made a lot of mistakes. Nobody sees those, right? He's done a lot of those, travel to wherever and have 7 people, right? And lose money.
Right.
He's just kept going, and he kept reiterating, making it better. And he had these grandiose ideas, and that's why he is where he is. That's why Steve Jobs is, like, none of them were special. I mean, they had their special talents, but none of them were particularly special. And they'll be the first to tell you that. I know we're running low on time, so there's a couple other questions that I want to get to. I want to hear, and you'll probably have to, like, somehow dwindle this down into one thing, but I always feel like, so right now I don't have kids. I have a cat, and he's awesome. But I feel like we can learn so much from kids, just in general. Kids don't have a filter. They don't have that, like, view of the world that is tainted really yet. They just live, and they're just living their, as Matthew McConaughey would say, they're getting down to the business of living. Right.
Yeah.
What is one thing, or one of the biggest things that you've learned from your daughter?
Probably it's not about you anymore. It's not about me anymore. Like, it's the serve others thing, man. It is.
Yeah.
Talk about a complete just punch in the gut that what you want to do is not what gets to be done right now. Like, there's and maybe it's my type A personality, but man, it is difficult for me to not be able to do what I want to do. And you realize the sacrifice is worth it. Like, that's what it comes down to. Like, is me wanting to go and teach this course here more important than having my daughter for the weekend and spending time with her? And these are the decisions. Like, without a child, those are decisions I don't have to make.
Yeah.
I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to the courts, but
Get on the plane. Yeah.
get on the plane. But man, like, it has taught me patience, empathy, like, just all those things that, and especially as a male growing up in a all male testosterone filled
World.
household and world, football player, this
Yeah.
idea of masculinity, men don't cry, men don't do, it's the man of the house. That's how I was brought up. And now living with a girl, like having a daughter, and then having a wife, and then my daughter's mother, and I'm completely surrounded by women now, which was a very hard thing for me to swallow. And it only made me better. It only made my life better. So that's what really, that, like, having a child has done for me, is it's taken, I'm still selfish in a lot of ways, but it's taken a lot of the selfishness out of me, and I've just chosen to collect moments, not things, in regards to my family and my daughter, because I could go and teach those courses and collect those paychecks and teach and hand her off to somebody else. And yeah, it's hard to do, but it's made me a better person. It's made me a better coach.
And you're serving her and yourself and the world in general, really.
Right. So the service is different. And yeah, that was really, really hard for me to swallow for the first 3 to 4 years. And from a coaching perspective, I now totally understand where all the parents were coming from that I was coaching, when they would say, like, yo, I can't do that. Like, I got my kid's baseball game this weekend. My kids don't eat that stuff. Like,
right.
I didn't sleep last night because my kid was in my room throwing up. Like, before, I used to be like, oh, that's just an excuse. And I have a 6-year-old now, and I was a single father for the first 3 years by myself. So I would have her 4 days a week, and then her mother would have her 4 days a week. So I was by myself, and I didn't work. I would just take care of her 4 days a week. Yeah. Oh yeah, it taught me a lot. So, hardest job in the world, but the best job in the world. That's really all I can say about it. It's the most difficult thing that you'll ever do, but it's one of the most gratifying things you'll ever do. That I can't remember what it was or where I saw it, but they asked these parents, they said, what makes you happiest in the world? Well, watching my kids do this, my kids growing up, what's the most difficult or most painful thing in the world? Well, my kids and having kids and them walking in my room while I'm sleeping. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what it comes down to.
I also just,
I don't know if I answered your question, but
100%. Yeah.
It's hard, but it's rewarding. And I had to change a lot of the ways I thought I was going to work and live. And
yeah, one of the greatest lessons it sounds like you've ever learned. And I think that there is something in that, just like that, the most difficult things, the most challenging things, every single time are the most rewarding things, like without question. Like, it's never not the case. So that's really cool. If you have a couple
play
minutes,
the long game, always play the long game, because when you think of it that way, like, okay, if I'm thinking about this long term, what's going to matter 20 years from now? It's that I spent more time with her, because I can always work more 20 years from now, but she'll only be one once. She'll only be 5 once. She'll only be 9 once. I can work till I'm 80. Like, that's easy. But yeah, that's the long-term mindset is what you really have to kind of turn on. Like, okay, the reason why I'm doing this 4 days a week and not working is because 20 years from now, it'll matter, and it'll be the most important decision I made. And that's really hard to not get that instant gratification the way we live now, to say, okay, in 20 years from now, this will be gratifying. But for the next 10, it's going to be really damn hard.
Yeah. Yes, and that's the opposite of instant gratification. You got to wait 20 years for it. But again, gonna be so valuable and so worth it. And the work you're doing is, like, I have this thought that like selfishness with the right intention is actually
Yeah.
selfless.
Right.
Right? It's actually selfless because I mean, having your daughter definitely helps you when you feel like you said exercise is important for your health in terms of the illness you had. Um,
Right.
I mean, that's going to get you on the treadmill, or that's going to get you
Yeah.
lifting
Yeah.
weights. Right. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very selfless in that regard.
Yeah.
One last thing, if you're okay with it,
Mhm.
where you're deeply ingrained in the coaching world. You coach yourself, you coach other coaches, you're helping to raise the industry standard with the certification. 2021, I mean, we can both say that the last 15 months a lot has changed. A
Yeah.
lot has changed.
Yeah.
Where do you think the coaching world is going in 2021 and beyond with what we know now?
Well, number one, you have to have some sort of, you don't have to, but virtual is here to stay. Having a YouTube channel, having a website, like all that stuff. But what I will say is that I don't think that that's going to be the norm, or do I think that's, I don't think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to flip where it's going to go 90% of people are doing stuff online and 10% of people are doing stuff in person. I think it's going to stay 90-10 because of this connection thing. Like, you can only do so much training on Zoom. You can only correct so much. You can only connect so much. And people are literally dying for connection right now. And I use the word dying is very serious because people die from not having enough connection with human beings. So I think now that everybody's been inside for 15 months, when we opened up in the town I'm in, we're outside of San Francisco, so we opened up a little bit early. It was pandemonium. Like, people, you couldn't get a seat at a restaurant, at the movie theater. It was jam packed everywhere because people want to be out. They want to be connected. I think gyms, coffee houses or cafes, breweries, parks are all replacing what used to be church or religion.
Right.
That's 100 years ago. That's where everybody went on Sunday, everybody. And work, because work used to be 9 to 5. It is not 9 to 5 anymore. And a lot of people can, about 30% of people, I think, are going to work from home. And the rest of them are going to have a hybrid schedule. Also, you don't have to go to stores anymore. You can literally
100%.
have everything shipped to your house. So,
Yeah.
like, people, if you're working from home and you shop from home, there's literally no other reason to leave religion is not what it used to be. There's no reason to leave your house. So people need to find reasons. Those are going to be restaurants. Those are going to be fitness or exercise or gyms. Those are going to be community centers, parks. What is the last one? Oh, cafes and breweries.
Yeah.
And guess what suffered the most during COVID was all the things that you can't meet and do. But those are the things that aren't going anywhere. And I think everybody realizes that now. And if you ask me, if I had to do Zoom training all day long, I wouldn't do this for a profession. I would personally, I would go and get another profession. I train 1 or 2 people online at a time. I do some online education. CFSC is not ever going to be online only. I mean, we have an online option for people who can't travel to the event, but
Right.
I'm going to coach in person. And funny enough, our online coaching is actually more expensive than our in-person because you don't have to pay for travel. So you save a bunch of money, and we don't want you taking the online. I want you coming to a live event because that's what coaching is. I would rather make you pay more and decentivize you to take the online and incentivize you to come to the live event because that is the best way we all learn. That is the best way we coach. And if I had to go straight online only, I just give all my clients away. You can have them. I want to be live in person. I want energy, and I don't think it's going anywhere. And I think the Peloton is going to become a coat rack, like treadmills and the elliptical and the NordiTrack was a coat rack. And in the 80s, it was huge. By 1990, it became a coat rack.
Yep.
I think Peloton will eventually become a coat rack. There's people that are crushing it. They've lost a lot of weight. That's awesome. But I do not think that is going to be a sustainable business model. It will be for Peloton, but not for trainers,
Right.
not for just riding a spin bike can help you burn calories, but you're still going to need strength training. You can do all the yoga you want. You're still going to need strength training. And then you can do all the strength training you want, but you still need cardio. So that's where I think those things come in. But yeah, I don't think we're going anywhere. And I think honestly, what it did, both sadly, but also I'm kind of happy about it, which might make me sound like a bit of a jerk, but it got rid of a lot of people who were not serious about this business or who ran shit gyms. And I have friends that lost gyms, and I feel very bad about it. And they made a choice to not continue forward, and I don't blame them whatsoever. And they're doing it in different ways to continue in the fitness industry. But I think it got rid of a lot of people who were not serious about it, and a lot of people who were running poorly run gyms. And it only elevated all those who stuck it through and who do this as a career. I wrote this book for people who do this for a living and want to do it for the rest of their life. I want to do this for the next 38 years, and I've already done it for 12. So that'll be 50 years of strength and conditioning. This is literally my life. Mm-hmm. And if it's not, then I don't want you in it. Like that's, I hope there becomes a licensure for fitness, because right now there's no licensure. It's just take a test and now you're a certified trainer. That scares the hell out of me. I have my degree in exercise science. I hope that becomes a standard. And I hope there becomes a licensure that you have to get a license, like massage, physical therapy, yoga has and they don't have a licensure. But yeah, like that's where I hope it's going. And maybe I sound like a jerk, but that's the truth. I'm glad it got a lot of people out who were not serious about it.
Well, I think the best, to go along that, because I agree with you. I think the longer this goes, the more people are craving connection. I mean, we were within 3 months, now it's been this long, but I think you talk about it elevating everything. Like, I think it's also, we're going to get rid of trim the fat, so to speak, but then it's also going to force an elevate. I think people are expecting more now. It's going to force an elevated service or an elevated product, which is only better for the good coaches and for the consumer, which it should be, right?
Right.
There's going to be better ways of running smaller gyms. That's going to be better for gym owners and better for trainers, which is ultimately going to be better for consumers. The trainer or the coach is going to have to put together a more well-rounded program, because seeing someone for 1 hour a week doesn't solve the whole problem. It doesn't solve the problem
it got people comfortable with exercising at home. It's one of the best things that ever happened to fitness.
Exactly. Realizing you don't need that.
Yeah. And I can hit more people. But again, I don't think it's going to be, I don't think it flips to 90% of people doing everything online and 10% of people doing it in person. I think it stays 90-10, but like you said, we trim the fat, and then everybody's game is going to have to elevate, because you're going to have to offer a virtual option, like you said, for the other 168 or 66 hours a week that you're not seeing me. You only see me for 2 hours. What are you doing the other 166? That's where we're going to step it up another level. And so, what are the silver linings? Like those are it. But I don't think live in-person stuff going anywhere. And I have no fears about being replaced by a computer or a robot that's going to train people for me because of that connection piece.
Yeah. I sure shit ain't doing that as a consumer. That's for sure. Man, I agree. It's going to elevate. And I think you can see it as the negative or the positive. I think we're starting to just, guys like you and I are just like, well, we're going to see it for the positive, and it's going to elevate our
Right.
industry. Okay, Brendon, I'm going to let you
Yeah.
go. Okay. Tell us the title of the book again, and then where else can people find you and see what you're all about?
So the book is called Coaching Rules, a how-to manual for a successful career in strength and fitness. If you just Google that or Amazon, Coaching Rules, it'll pop up. If you want to know anything about me, I made it really simple. It's just my first and last name.com. Literally everything is there. Everything I do, everything I own, everything I believe, it's all on one page. So you don't need to go search for a bunch of different social media things. It's BrendonRearick. There's no A's. BrendonRearick.com. BrendonRearick.com. No A's. That's what gets a lot of people.
Yeah, and you'll find everything you need. You'll find everything you need right there. Thank you so much for being here, man, and for taking the extra time to just let loose. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to do it, Gavin. Thanks for having me on.